Hello and welcome to FYI Online. Today we're going to present to you Avoid Procrastination. My name is Kyle Colmia and I'm the director of the Student Success and Opportunity Center on campus, where we have tutoring, workshops, and a computer lab. If you are getting extra credit for this workshop, be sure to go to our website here, osukc.edu/FYI, so you can click on the link to the online quiz to make sure that we know you have watched this video. Okay, today we're going to start off by watching a short YouTube video on why we procrastinate and what goes on in our brains when we're procrastinating. Maybe you guys can relate to this video a little bit as students.
Procrastination manifests itself within every aspect of your life. You wait until the last minute to buy a Christmas present. You put off seeing the dentist or getting that thing checked out by the doctor. There's a pile of dishes getting higher in the kitchen. Perhaps the stakes are higher than choosing to play Angry Birds instead of doing sit-ups. You might have a deadline for a grant proposal or a dissertation or a presentation or a book. You'll get around to it. You'll start tomorrow. You'll take the time to learn a foreign language or how to play an instrument. Before you do, though, maybe you should check your email. You should head over to Facebook, too, just to get it out of the way. You can try to fight this back. You can buy a daily planner and a to-do list application for your phone, but these tools alone will not help because the problem isn't you are a bad manager of your time. You are a bad tactician in the war inside your brain. In psychology, there's this thing called present bias. It means being unable to grasp what you want changes over time, and what you want now isn't the same thing you will want later. Present bias explains why you buy lettuce and bananas only to throw them out later when you forget to eat them. Present bias is why you've made the same resolution for the 10th year in a row, but this time, you mean it. Thinking about thinking. This is the key. In the struggle between should versus want, some people have figured out something crucial. Want never goes away. Procrastination is all about choosing want over should, because you don't have a plan for those times when you can expect to be tempted. You must be adept at thinking about thinking to defeat yourself at procrastination. You must realize there is the you who sits there now reading this, and there is a you sometime in the future who will be influenced by a different set of ideas and desires. A you in a different setting where an alternate palette of brain functions will be available for painting reality. The now you may see the cost and rewards at stake when it comes time to choose studying for the test instead of going to the club, eating the salad instead of the cupcake, writing the article instead of playing the video game. The trick is to accept the now you will not be the person facing those choices. It will be the future you, a person who can't be trusted. Future you will give in, and then you'll go back to being now you and feel weak and ashamed. Now you must trick future you into doing what is right for both parties. Capable psychonauts who think about thinking, about states of mind, about set and setting, can get things done not because they have more willpower, more drive, but because they know productivity is a game of cat and mouse versus a childish, primal human predilection for pleasure and novelty which can never be excised from the soul. Your effort is better spent outsmarting yourself than making empty promises through plugging dates into a calendar or setting deadlines for push-ups. You can learn to live with procrastination, to work around it, but you can never truly delete it from your life. It's just one of the many ways you are not so smart.
Okay, so that was actually a book review by this man called Why You're Not So Smart. But I think it does give a good description of why we procrastinate and this idea that we have past, present, and future selves that we have to be aware of, especially our present and future self when it comes to procrastination. So just briefly to go over who these selves of ours are. Our past self, that's the one that's going to make the big dreams, the person who made the New Year's resolutions, or the one that decided to go back to school. They're very idealistic, and they haven't had to make the compromises yet to getting to where they want to go to. Now the future self, that's the weakest, just like they were talking about in the video. It's the one who's going to want to play the video games or hang out with friends in the present instead of doing the work in the for the future. So, again, they understand risk in a limited way, kind of like the past self. But the future self, that's the one that really is going to understand the risk. And that's the one who is going to have to deal with the consequences from the present self. So, future self is relaxed and calm, but understands that making mistakes is okay because he or she is fine even though you've made them. Here's another example of how our past, present, and future selves work. You guys might relate to this as students. The past you may say, I have a lot of work to do, but I can do it later. I have time. Your present you then may say, why didn't I already do this? Well, I'm sure I'll get it done later. And then your future you is looking back and saying, stop leaving me with all this work. Why didn't you guys do this work beforehand? So as students, I'm sure you can relate to this. And again, the point is to make sure that you're thinking more about your future self when it comes to schoolwork and it comes to deadlines and things that you have to get done. Okay, moving on, I wanted to highlight this idea of a procrastination self-assessment. Again, everyone procrastinates. However, some people procrastinate in different ways and for different reasons. So according to this woman, Dr. Linda Sabaden, there are 6 types of procrastinators that she highlights here: the perfectionist, the dreamer, the worrier, defier, the crisis maker, and the overdoer. I challenge you guys to each take a few minutes to take the procrastination self-assessment quiz. It's not very long. Here's the link to the page. I'll just show you what it looks like really quickly. So again, you can see it's not very long, but you do answer a series of questions, and then at the very end, they'll give you your results down here about what your scores and your procrastination styles lean toward. It's really good because it also has ideas on how to overcome your specific procrastination style. Okay, so, and they call it, in that quiz, when they give you ideas on how to overcome your procrastination style, they call it changing the pattern. I want to emphasize today that changing the pattern is both physical, it's about what you actually do, how you actually plan for the future, but then it's also mental, because you do have to overcome a lot of mental obstacles and kind of increase this idea of willpower in order to avoid and overcome your procrastination. So first we're going to start by talking about how to physically stop procrastinating and ways in which you can do so right now with your studies. We're going to watch another video on how to do so.
All right, let's be honest. Is there something else you're supposed to be doing right now? Do you have a paper due in 10 hours? Is there a stinky pile of laundry slowly inching its way across your bedroom floor? You should be doing those things, but instead you're here listening to me lecture you on YouTube. Wait. Don't go away just yet. The next 5 minutes will be the most productive bit of procrastination you have done all day. And you're not the only one procrastinating. Thanks to a suggestion by one of our viewers, today's episode of Wellcast is going to bring you a 3-step program to wrangle your monster of procrastination into submission. About 20% of the population identifies themselves as chronic procrastinators. People who constantly put off the things that they really need to do. And that is because procrastination is about lying to yourself. You know, telling yourself, I'll have plenty of time to finish that paper tomorrow, when you know you are way behind. In a recent study, 2 groups of university students were assigned to write 3 papers in 3 weeks. Group A was given the opportunity to turn in all 3 papers in at any point during those 3 weeks. Group B, on the other hand, had strict weekly deadlines for each paper. Ultimately, the ones who did the best on the papers were the ones given the strict deadlines. Group A, the students who had to pick their own deadlines, they did pretty poorly. Clearly, humans are not the best at regulating themselves. So, when it comes to procrastination, you have to trick yourself into getting the job done. And this brings us to our Wellcast 3-step method for stopping procrastination. Please pause and print out your worksheet at watchwellcast.com. Okay, are you ready? Step 1. Eat an elephant. Hey, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. Look, what I'm saying is, you need time to digest, or you're going to make yourself sick. Reward yourself for getting through parts of the project rather than waiting to reward yourself after the whole thing's over. Okay, procrastinator, think about that one project that you really need to get done. But calm down. Instead of letting it overwhelm you, organize that project into small, bite-sized, manageable segments. Think about what needs to get done and write down what you're going to be doing to tackle this project hour by hour and make it specific. By breaking down this giant project into smaller tasks, this elephant will become a lot less daunting. Step 2. Pick out the itsy-bitsy goblins instead of going for the whole dragon. The hardest part about starting any project is always starting the project. A good way to get around this is to start a project off with the task you like the best. Listen, when you do something that you like, your brain releases dopamines, which makes you happy. Maybe it's decorating the cover of a report or writing a snappy intro into an otherwise incredibly boring paper. Step 3. Ignore the siren songs. Seriously, this step is straight out of Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. In The Odyssey, our protagonist Ulysses is trying to get home. Unfortunately, this requires maneuvering through a strait of water where sailors are often lured onto the rocks by creatures called sirens. Instead of giving up, Ulysses instructs his crew to tie him to the mast of his ship and for all of them to plug their ears. No matter how much he yells and screams to head towards the beautiful sirens, the sailors must keep on track. We're not saying that you need to actually tie yourself up to anything, but you should plan to clear any distractions that will hamper your ability to procrastinate later. For example, if you're a sucker for Facebook or online video games, have your parents or your roommates change the internet password to keep you on track for studying. The less temptations you give into, or have the ability to give into, the better you'll be at acing that exam. Okay, kiddos, let's recap. The best way to get around procrastination is to trick yourself into doing the work. It's true, though. We recommend that you do this in one of 3 ways. Number 1, breaking your tasks into segments. In other words, you go ahead and eat that elephant. Number 2, start with the most enjoyable part of the project. Go for those itsy-bitsy goblins. And number 3, avoid that siren song. Clear out those distractions so you can get the job done. Have these tips helped? Leave us a message below or email us at watchwellcast.com.
Okay. So hopefully that helped break down a little bit about how specifically to stop procrastinating right now for your classes. I want to emphasize the idea of writing down when you're going to study and how long you're going to study for. In the SSOC, we call those study plans, and we actually have them available for you if you want them, or you can use your own type of study plan if you want to just write it down on your own, or if you want to use your planner, kind of whatever works for you. But a few tips to creating a study plan. They already kind of went over that in the video, but I want to just reiterate. Just make sure you know what your goal is and what you're preparing for and when it's due. That's very, very important, obviously. Use at least 2 types of prep and review strategies. We're going to go over these in just a second, but I want to emphasize the idea of switching up your studying. Studies have shown that if you switch up your studying, you're more likely to remember that information than if you just do one thing the entire time. Also, try not to exceed 2 hours a day per subject. I'd like to emphasize this technique of working in 25-minute increments here, and then give yourself a 5-minute break. Or maybe even if you want to exceed that a little bit, you could even do 45 minutes and then giving yourself a 10-minute break. It's really important to give yourself breaks, and that way you have something to look forward to, and you can always work less or more, but it does give you kind of a goal to get to. Give yourself a little snack or walk around the house a little bit just to get your blood flowing. The point is to not overdo it. The study plan is there to help you plan out way in advance when things are due. So you're going to do a study plan for a longer amount of time, maybe 2 or 1 weeks leading up to the due date. But you're going to study for less, if that makes sense. Studies have also shown that when you study over a longer period of time but for less each day, then that actually helps you remember information more. So I definitely suggest using this idea of, 25 minutes and 5 minutes or 45 minutes and 10 minutes, just to give yourself something to look forward to, and that will actually help you get through studying a lot more quickly. Okay, also, it's important to talk to other people about your goals, your friends, your instructor, or maybe your classmates, and that way they can help you keep you in check. And then other strategies that I want to highlight, just making sure that you're keeping in good health. This will help your brain work more properly if you're being healthy to your body. So getting in a few workouts a week, getting good sleep, and using relaxation techniques like deep breathing will help you relax and help your brain function better while you're trying to study for these tests or for these big projects. Okay, so again, study plans, we want to make sure we're doing at least 2 to 3 prep and review strategies per study plan. I want to highlight the idea that to study, you have to think of it in 2 different ways. You have to have something that you prep for, and then you have to review what you've prepped for. So, in other words, you can't just open your textbook and start studying or look at your notes and then just automatically be studying. You have to prep for something, and then you have to review what you prepped for. So, for example, I'm a big proponent of flashcards. So you actually have to make your flashcards, write down, the key terms and their definitions or key ideas and their definitions. Then use those flashcards to review. Recite them out loud to a friend or recite them from memory. Similarly, say you have a study guide. Make sure you complete that study guide or even make your own study guide. Then you can practice that study guide out loud or from memory. Another big one that I like to do is marking the text material. So as you're reading any text that you have for class, highlight or underline key ideas. Then take notes on that remarked test and be sure you try to review those from memory. Another big one is creating concept maps and then replicating concept maps. So these are just some good ideas. You can obviously use your own prep and review strategies, but I like to again emphasize the idea that you need both a prep strategy and a review strategy when you're studying. So in your study plan, make sure that you're giving yourself ample amount of time to both prep and review. Okay, we're going to listen to a little snippet from a man who wrote this book called Willpower. Now we're shifting over to talking about how avoiding procrastination can be mental. So again, we'll take a few minutes to listen to this idea about this book called Willpower that this man, John Tierney, has written.
First thing I thought when I saw the cover of the book Willpower was guilt and cupcakes. Here's why. When it comes to some parts of life, like reading books for work, I've got a lot of discipline. When it comes to other things, like defying my craving for boutique versions of desserts I can actually make at home, I've got no willpower at all. I'm sure I'm not the only one, and I wanted to meet New York Times science writer John Tierney in person to find out why that is. And he graciously agreed to meet me at a cupcake shop in New York called Sweet Revenge, where we each picked our poison.
I got the pure vanilla.
Yes, and I had the crimson and cream, which is technically red velvet. So we both have our cupcakes, but we're going to see who reaches for the cupcake first, right? Okay, in keeping with the spirit of the book. So, the title of the book is Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength. Now, I thought the greatest human strength was opposable thumbs, but it sounds like you found otherwise. What define willpower?
Well, it's more than a metaphor. Willpower is more than a metaphor. The Victorians talked about this vague idea of it being some form of mental energy, and in the last 15 years, we've discovered that it really is a form of energy in the brain. It's like a muscle that can be strengthened with use, but it also gets fatigued with use.
Now, I was under the impression that I had different amounts of willpower for different things. That, when it comes to doing things for work, I had a certain amount of willpower and discipline. But when it came to other parts of my life, like exercise, my willpower seemed to be, I just didn't seem to have as much. But it sounds like you're saying that's not the case.
Well, no, there's one source of energy that you draw on when you exercise self-control. And whether you're trying not to eat food, whether you're trying to do your work, whether you're trying to exercise, making decisions and resisting temptations all draws down from the same source of energy. But some things are going to affect you more than others. Work might be easier for you to do than exercise simply because you enjoy it more. So all these things are going to affect different people in different ways. But it is one source of energy. And as you go through the day, you have less of it because every time you resist a temptation, every time you make yourself do something at work, that's depleting this same source of energy. And our just sitting here with these cupcakes by not eating them. I'm looking at that and it looks really good, and just sitting next to it is depleting my willpower. One of the tricks for dieting is to keep the food out of sight. They've done experiments in the laboratory and in real life where they just putting food where you can see it next to you depletes your willpower, whereas putting it away in a drawer or putting it across the room makes it easier for you because you're not actively resisting that temptation.
So give us an idea how you actually test or study something like willpower. It's not just, I assume it's not just a case of putting a plate of chocolate chip cookies in front of someone and seeing what they do.
Well, actually, one of the famous experiments involved chocolate chip cookies and radishes. The students would skip a meal, go into the lab, and they'd have to wait in a waiting room. And on the table, there was a plate of radishes and a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. And they found that the act of actually resisting those cookies, the people in that condition had less self-control later. They would give up sooner on tasks.
So the test wasn't actually the cookies and the radishes, the test was later. So how much energy you had later on to deal with temptation.
Exactly. And so things later on you'd have a harder time doing. You could manage to get by the cookies, but then you wouldn't be able to do a puzzle, or you'd quit sooner doing another task.
So what are some of the implications of this, you think?
Well, one of the things is that you only have a finite amount as you go through the day, so you should be careful to conserve it.
Talk a little bit about, I guess, what this means then for dieters, say.
Well, dieting is really the hardest form of self-control. Willpower, the store of mental energy that you have, depends on having glucose in you. And they've done tests showing that you can restore somebody's willpower by giving him a drink of lemonade with sugar in it, whereas a drink of lemonade with Splenda doesn't do the trick, because it doesn't provide the same glucose to the body. Now you can get glucose from lots of food, not just these cupcakes next to us. You can get it from more nutritious fare. There's this catch-22 that dieters have, where in order to diet, you need willpower. But in order to have willpower, you need to eat.
So you've called willpower a muscle. How do we exercise that particular muscle?
There are ways that have been done. For instance, in one experiment, students were just told, for the next week as you go about your task, sit up straight all week. The old thing, watch your posture. And the students who did that, who worked on their posture, when they came back to the lab, they would perform better on all kinds of other self-control tasks that had nothing to do with sitting up straight. It was like basically that they strengthened that muscle. And almost anything you do that requires some mental effort, not using contractions when you speak, only speaking in complete sentences, saying no instead of nah. Don't use profanities, saying prayers, meditating. All these things require mental effort, and the more you do that, the more it builds up that muscle. And that's probably one of the reasons that people who are religious tend to have more self-control. This has been shown in study after study. And one reason probably is that they do these exercises. Most religions have prayers you say, exercises, meditations you do. All those things build up that self-control muscle.
What are some of the sort of hints and clues that people can look for in their own lives for when their willpower is being depleted? I mean, beyond the obvious, beyond reaching for the cupcake or the cigarette or whatever it is, what are the little red flags that you should look for?
That's a great question. Scientists went through dozens of experiments trying to find what are the symptoms of ego depletion, of not having willpower. And it isn't one single thing. It's that everything feels more intensely to you. Good things and bad things. You suddenly feel everything more intensely because your brain has lost some of the ability to regulate emotions. And so you therefore respond more strongly to everything. And you want, cravings feel stronger, your irritation feels stronger at things. And so when you feel this, it's a sign that you're being depleted, and either try to get some glucose in you, don't make any life-changing decisions.
Don't make any life-changing decisions between like 2 and 5, I guess.
Right.
Like
late in the afternoon is good. And just at the end of the day, I mean, people don't get into real trouble with, having affairs and going on drunken things. That tends to happen in the evening.
John Tierney is a science writer for the New York Times. He co-authored the book Willpower, Rediscovering the Greatest Human Strength with scientist Roy Baumeister. John Tierney, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you.
And I think it's time to dig in, actually.
All right. So I just wanted to emphasize the idea of willpower to you guys, and that it can be like a muscle. It can be strengthened with time. So excuse me, for some takeaways from our workshop today. Definitely give yourself those short and long-term deadlines. The long-term deadlines, you can use study plans to help you, and then the short-term, again, try to study in increments of 25 minutes and then a 5-minute break, or whatever works for you. Also, strengthen your willpower. Just realize that mentally, the more that you practice willpower and avoiding procrastination, the easier that it will get in the long run. And I'd like to end this workshop with an inspirational quote on the left-hand side here by Kenneth Blanchard. There's a difference between interest and commitment. When you're interested in doing something, you do it only when it's convenient. When you're committed to something, you accept no excuses, only results. Thank you so much for listening to our FYI Online. I hope you learned something, and we will hopefully see you guys soon. Thanks.